No.
Why not?
Bullshit.
What do you mean, Elvis?
Climate goes up and down for centuries and millennium. There's no such thing as climate change.
On the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax. The climate change agenda is a hoax. More people are dying of bad climate change policies than they are of actual climate change.
You're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And this really is the essence of what science can do, is people will make different value judgments, they'll have different preferences, different priorities, but what science can do is provide a statement of the facts.
YouTube is making millions of dollars a year off of climate change deniers. That's according to a report published Tuesday by the Center for Countering Digital Hate, a nonprofit that monitors hate speech, which said climate deniers have found ways to evade YouTube's misinformation policies. And that's allowed videos filled with false claims about climate change to run on YouTube's ad-supported channels. The CCDH used artificial intelligence to review transcripts from more than 12,000 videos from the past 6 years on 96 YouTube channels. In doing so, the organization noticed a new tactic used by climate deniers. Instead of disputing the existence of global warming, which would ban such videos from the site, most of the content analyzed attacked climate solutions as unworkable, portrayed global warming as harmless or beneficial, or cast climate science and the environmental movement as unreliable. According to the CCDH, YouTube, which is owned by Alphabet, makes up to $13.4 million a year from ads that run on the channels the report analyzed. In a statement, YouTube did not comment directly on the report, but defended its policies. A YouTube spokesperson told Reuters, quote, "Debate or discussions of climate change topics, including around public policy or research, is allowed. However, when content crosses the line to climate change denial, we stop showing ads on those videos." The CCDH, however, called on YouTube to update its policy on climate denial content.
Worried about global warming?
No. I don't think climate change affects anything. It's how Mother Nature just brings climate to us.
They know they have problems.
No, they're lying. They're assuming what they're supposed to be proving.
Where were the climate attribution studies for the 17-year hurricane drought?
Can't measure what's happening in global warming and what happened this year.
That's totally fake science. What's wrong with more warming?
All of this with the global warming and that, a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax.
I've always rejected the politicization of the weather.
Clearly, the climate is changing. Not as dramatically as the radical environmentalists like to present. There'll be modest changes in temperature.
We need to continue advocating to all other stakeholders to invest in robust digital literacy drives. Our aim should be to empower users of all ages to better understand how digital platforms work, how their personal data might be used, and to identify and respond to mis- and disinformation and hate speech.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I am your host, Sandy Shellis, and it's really good to see you guys here. Thank you, everyone, for coming, moderating, and it's great to see you, TCR, and Susan, and Bella, and Anti-Corporatist Kai. Great to see you, Kim. Thank you for moderating. Obsolete Optics, couldn't do it without you. Tommyist, Looney Tunes. Hi, Looney Tunes. Pinkerbell. Oh, my gosh. Jake is here. Kristen Rose. Everybody, Veg. All right. There's a lot of great folks in the chat. And John Glad. So we're going to get started because this is actually a topic that I've been studying for a long time. Not just the climate denying, but I'm going to go into what inoculation theory is. I've talked about it before. And it really interests me. And if I ever were to go back to school and continue in my social science realm, I think I would be pretty fascinated to do a PhD in this whole genre of inoculation theory, misinformation. It's fascinating. And I'll tell you how it started for me to be fascinating. So back in 2016, 2015, I was on these Facebook groups, and we were Bernie supporters, or so I thought. A lot of people were. And I started seeing something strange happening, and I couldn't understand it. I was not well enough versed to understand what was happening before my eyes to people that I had known through this whole, the whole election season, but they started talking about Pizzagate. And they started talking about things that I was just completely floored and completely freaked out. I was like, what the hell is this? Pizzagate, this is insanity, okay? I really wasn't even well-versed in who Alex Jones was or any of it, actually, at that time. I was quite naive. I was out of my career, but I had worked a long time in research administration. I wasn't used to this, okay? I really wasn't used to all the social media crap. For the most part, we had a Bernie group. It was a clean Bernie group. Bernie babes. It was fun. I was with real progressives, but they changed their direction somewhat, but I didn't understand a lot of this, what was happening. So I made it my mission to start learning, and learn I did. So I realized that a lot of what was happening was going in between the faith, the religious realm, the faith realm, and it was spilling over into, climate denying, and people that I was shocked to find out that they had started following climate change denying scientists, who I won't even call scientists, and going into places that I couldn't deal with myself. And it was upsetting and shocking, really, actually, for me. So I want to talk about what is going on, but of course I called it was the hottest year on earth because it's after one of the articles that I am going to use. But I really do want to talk about inoculation theory, but I don't want to put it in a way where you're thinking it is coercion, or it is marketing, or it is something that is, all right, think of it this way. When you've got school children that are just entering their teenage years, and you want to inoculate them against all of the messages that they're going to hear about smoking cigarettes. All right, just give that for an example. So think about the messages, the inoculations that you would be giving them, because the inoculation theory was named and patterned after vaccine theory, in fact, and so you would inoculate yourself against the virus of, in my case, misinformation, disinformation, or, excuse me, all of a sudden I got an itchy nose. So we're going to start out with an article. First, we're going to go, I have these articles. And by the way, the reason why Jennifer's not with me tonight is she did get sick and she wasn't feeling up to doing the show. It's not anything serious. She's on the way to getting better. So I then chose, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the inoculation show. So here we go. I'm going to start out. God, I'm going to start out and bring up, and you know how it always takes me a little time to get myself started here and bring up my articles. All right. I've got a lot of stuff, and I hope you're ready to learn. I really do. I hope you're ready to learn. And don't forget, give me a like. You can always join the channel if you want to be a member. I'm, excited about that. We're going to be starting the Anthropocene Gardener playlist soon. There's going to be some fun things, I hope. All right. So this is the article I actually named it after. Why people still fall for fake news about climate change. It was the hottest year on Earth in 125,000 years, and climate scam is taking off. And I know you guys see this because you peruse most of the same thing I do, only I get hooked into the comment sections, and I look at Twitter and I see what's happening on Twitter, and I don't know if they're bots, if they're people. I don't know what it is. And I've also been called, well, not me particularly, but some of my guests are shills for the fossil fuel industry, which is the biggest bunch. That's a big bunch of bullshit. Okay, that's misinformation right there, because this channel brings on all kinds of voices. And I don't tell you how to think. I bring you information so you can make up your own mind. And inoculation theory works kind of like that. But let's just jump into this first article from phys.org. Why are they climate change deniers? And this is brand new, from brand new research that came out. And so I'm going to just read this one because it's a short one. Do climate change deniers bend the facts to avoid having to modify their environmentally harmful behavior? Research from the University of Bonn and the Institute of Labor Economics, IZA, ran an online experiment involving 4,000 U.S. adults, found no evidence to support the idea. The authors of the study were themselves surprised by the results. Whether they are good or bad news for fight against global heating remains to be seen. The study is in the journal Nature Climate Change, and I have that. Where is that? Is this it? Oh my gosh, I have so many of them pulled up. Well, anyway, a surprisingly large number of people downplay the impact of climate change or deny that it is primarily a product of human activity. But why? One hypothesis is that these misconceptions are rooted in a specific form of self-deception, namely that people simply find it easier to live with their own climate failings, and if they do not believe that things will actually get all that bad. We call this thought process motivated reasoning, says Professor Florian Zimmerman, an economist at the University of Bonn and research director at the IZA. Motivated reasoning helps us justify our behavior. For instance, someone who flies off on holiday several times a year can give themselves the excuse that, well, the plane would be taking off without them. And I have said, when I fly to my mother's, I say, well, I've been told that, hey, if my ass isn't in the seat, someone else's is going to be. So I felt better about going to visit my mom and flying. But all these patterns of argument are examples of motivated reasoning, bending the facts until it allows us to maintain a positive image of ourselves while maintaining our harmful behavior. Self-deception to preserve a positive self-image. So what role does this form of self-deception play in how people think about climate change? Previously, there had been little scientific evidence produced to answer the question. The latest study has now closed the gap in this area. It has thrown up some unexpected results. And Zimmerman and his colleagues, Lasse Stolzer, ran a series of online experiments using a representative sample of 4,000 U.S. adults. At the center of the experiment was a donation worth $20. Participants allocated at random to one or two groups. The members of the first group were able to split the $20 between two organizations, both of which were committed to combating climate change. By contrast, those in the second group would actually decide to keep the $20 for themselves instead of giving it away, and would then actually receive the money at the end. So anyone keeping hold of the donation needs to justify it to themselves, says Zimmerman, who's also a member of the Econ Tribute Cluster of Excellence, Collaborative Research Center, Regio 224, and the Transdisciplinary Research Area, Individuals and Societies at the University of Bonn. The one way is to deny the existence of climate change. And as it happened, nearly half of those in the second group decided to hold on to the money. The researchers now wanted to know whether these individuals would justify their decision retrospectively by repudiating climate change. The two groups had been put together at random without motivated reasoning. Therefore, they should essentially share a similar attitude to human-made global heating. If those who kept the money for themselves justified their actions through self-deception, however, then their group should exhibit greater doubt over climate change. Well, we didn't see any sign of that effect, she said. The finding was also borne out in two other experiments. In other words, our study didn't give us any indications that the widespread misconceptions regarding climate change are due to this kind of self-deception. Summing up his work. Him. On the face of it, this is good news for policymakers because the results could mean that it is indeed possible to correct climate change misconceptions simply by providing comprehensive information. If people are bending reality by contrast, then this approach is very much a non-starter. Okay? Our data does reveal some indications of a variant of motivated reasoning, specifically that denying the existence of human-made global heating forms part of the political identity of certain people. Put another way, some people may, to an extent, define themselves by the very fact that they do not believe in climate change. As far as they are concerned, this way of thinking is an important trait that sets them apart from other political groups, and thus they are likely to simply not care what researchers say on the topic. So I thought that did a good job. And I'm not going to read Eureka Alert, but everybody and their brother are putting in pieces here. And I have a really quick question to ask you guys on my audio. Because I got a pop filter, and it's just a $11 pop filter, and I noticed that when I was making recordings that you could hear all those noises. So I wanted to make sure that I was... if you guys could help me out and just tell me, am I loud enough? I don't want to be overmodulated. So you do that. Okay. Thank you. Just let me know. I don't know if anybody's answering me, but, okay. Thank you, Anticorpus. Thank you. All right. So I'm not going to do this one. It's the same, but now this is the big one that I want to read. And then after I read this, we're going to go into climate inoculation because it's so good. I mean, I literally could play this for you and just sit here and let you listen, but I'll read it. Okay. So why are we going into comment sections or tweets and seeing all this climate hoax, climate scam, and all the stuff that you've seen? So I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly. In 1995, a leading group of scientists convened by the United Nations declared that they had detected a human influence on global temperatures with effectively irreversible consequences. In the coming decades, 99.9% of scientists would come to agree that burning fossil fuels had disrupted the Earth's climate. Yet 30 years after the warning, during the hottest year on Earth in 125,000 years, people are still arguing that science is unreliable or the threat is real, but we shouldn't do anything about it. Conspiracies are thriving online, according to a report by the Coalition Climate Action Against Disinformation released last month in time for Dubai. Over the past year, posts with the hashtag ClimateScan have gotten more likes and retweets on the platform known as X than others that with the climate crisis or climate emergency. By now, anyone looking out the window can see flowers blooming earlier, lakes freezing later, like the Great Lakes, like my show on the Great Lakes. Why, after all this time, do 15% of Americans fall for the lie that global warming isn't happening? And is there anything that can be done to bring them around to reality? New research suggests that understanding why fake news is compelling to people can tell us something about how to defend ourselves against it. People buy into bad information for different reasons, says Andy Norman, an author and philosopher who co-founded the Mental Immunity Project, which we're going to look at. I know I have it pulled up, so we will be looking at that, which aims to protect people from manipulative information. Due to quirks of psychology, people can end up overlooking inconvenient facts when confronted with arguments that support their beliefs. Hence, people that fell into Pizzagate then later became QAnon. Not all of them, but, fell into QAnon and fell for the, oh my gosh, they're going to save all the children. And I mean, this happened to me. I did a little short on it where I was sitting in a parking lot. I was putting some stuff in my vehicle, and this man walks up to me out in the middle of nowhere and asks me if I knew that Donald Trump, who was not president, was going in with 60,000 troops to rescue the children through the tunnels under the White House. Okay, I knew, something's going on. And I never did go to the church. I was going to go to the church where I figured maybe some of this stuff was being disseminated, but I did not. So, anyway, the more you rely on useful beliefs at the expense of true beliefs, the more unhinged your thinking becomes, Norman said. Another reason people are drawn to conspiracies is they feel that they are in a big, world-transforming secret. Flat earthers think they're seeing past the illusions that the vast majority don't. The UN, the annual UN climate summits, often coincide with a surge in misleading information on social media. As COP28 ramped up last November, conspiracy theories circulating claiming that governments were trying to cause food shortages by seizing land from farmers, supposedly using climate change as an excuse. Spreading lies about global warming like those can lead to further social divisions and undermine public and political support for action to reduce emissions, according to the Climate Action Disinformation Report. It can also lead to harassment. Some 73% of climate scientists who regularly appear in the media have experienced online abuse, and some of those are people that we follow and respect. Part of the problem is the genuine appeal of the fake news. A recent study in Nature Human Behavior found that the climate change disinformation was more persuasive than scientific facts. Well, yeah, it's like, it's sexy. It's interesting. It like feeds that primal feeling if you already are susceptible to that. They originally intended to see if they could help people fend off the disinformation, testing different strategies, how many strategies? I don't know. But on nearly 7,000 people from 12 countries, including the United States, India, and Nigeria. Participants read a paragraph intended to strengthen their mental defenses, reminders of the scientific consensus around climate change, the trustworthiness of scientists, or moral responsibility to act, for example. Then they were subjected to a barrage of 20 real tweets that blamed warming on the sun and the wavy jet stream, spouted conspiracies about the climate hoax devised by the UN, and warned that the elites want us to eat bugs. The interventions didn't work as hoped, said Tobias Pampati, an author of the study and a neuroscience researcher at the University of Geneva. The flood of fake news meant to stimulate what people encounter in social media. Echo chambers had a big effect. Reading the tweets about bogus conspiracies lowered people's belief that climate change was happening, their support for action to reduce emissions, and their willingness to do something about it personally. The disinformation was simply more compelling than scientific facts, partly because it plays with people's emotions. Yeah. Spampetti said, eliciting anger towards elites who want you to eat bugs, for example. The only paragraph that helped people recognize falsehoods was the one that prompted them to evaluate the accuracy of the information that they were seeing. Right? A nudge that brought some people back to reality. And I think it's kind of a hard shove for that today. The study attempted to use prebunking, a tactic to vaccinate people against fake news. While the effort flopped, Norman said that doesn't mean it shows that inoculation is ineffective. Spampetti and other researchers' effort to fortify people's mental defenses used a new, broader approach to prebunking, trying to protect against a bunch of lines of disinformation at once. That didn't work as well as tried and true inoculation techniques. Norman says it's crucial that any intervention to stop the spread of disinformation comes with a weakened dose of it, like a vaccine, to help people understand why some people might benefit from lying. For example, when Biden administration learned of Russia's President Vladimir Putin's plans to invade Ukraine in late 2021, the White House began warning the world that Russia would push a false narrative to justify the invasion, including staging a fake graphic video of a Ukrainian attack on Russian territory. When the video came out, it was quickly dismissed as fake news. It was a wildly successful attempt to inoculate much of the world against Putin's preferred narrative about Ukraine. For climate change, that approach might not succeed. Decades of oil-funded disinformation campaigns have already infected the public. It's really hard to think about someone who hasn't been exposed to climate skepticism or disinformation from the fossil fuel industries. We all have, right? That was Emma Frances Bloomfield. She's a communication professor at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. It's just so pervasive. They have talking heads who go on news programs. They flood media publications and the internet. They pay lobbyists. Bloomfield argues that disinformation sticks for a reason. And simply telling the people who fall for it that there's a scientific consensus is just not enough. They're doubting climate change because they doubt scientific authorities, Bloomfield said. They're making decisions about the environment, but not based on facts or science, but based on their values or other things that are important to them. So while political identity can explain some resistance to climate change, there are other reasons why people dismiss the evidence, such as Bloomfield outlines in her upcoming book, Science versus the Story, Narrative Strategies for Science Communicators. And that's probably a good book for our Karen Singing Way. I don't know if she's here tonight, but that's a good one for her because she's a science communicator. In the climate change story, we're the villains, or at least partially blameworthy for what's happening to the environment, and it requires us to make a lot of sacrifices, Bloomfield said. Now, that's a hard story to adopt because of the role we're playing within it. Accepting climate change to some degree means accepting that inner conflict. You always know you could do more to lower your carbon footprint, whether that's ditching meat, refusing to fly, or wearing your old clothes until they're threadbare and ratty. But by contrast, embracing climate denial allows people to identify as heroes. They don't have to do anything differently and might even see driving around in a gas-guzzling truck as part of God's plan. Yeah, it's a comforting narrative, isn't it? It's certainly easier than wrestling with ethical dilemmas or existential dread. Those seeking to amplify tensions around climate change or spread doubt, such as fossil fuel companies, social media trolls, and countries like Russia and China, get a lot of bang for their buck. It's a lot easier and cheaper to push doubt than to push certainty. Oil companies, including Shell, Exxon, and BP, spent about $4 million to $5 million on Facebook ads related to social issues and politics this year, according to the Climate Action Disinformation Report. To sow doubt, you only need to arouse such suspicion. Creating a bulletproof case for something is so much harder. It might take thousands of scientific studies or debunking hundreds of counter arguments one by one, as this Grist magazine did in 2006. The most straightforward way to fight disinformation would be to stop it from happening in the first place. But even if regulators were able to get social media companies to try to stop the spread of conspiracy theories and falsehoods, dislodging them is a different story. And of course, remember, fake news or they're taking away our freedom of speech, all of those things are legitimate, right? One promising approach, deep canvassing, seeks to persuade people through non-judgmental, one-on-one conversations. The outreach method, invented by the LGBTQ and advocates, involves hearing people's concerns and helping them work through their conflicted feelings. Remember how accepting climate change means accepting you might be a tiny part of the problem? Research has shown that deep canvassing isn't just successful at reducing transphobia, but that its effects can last for months, a long time compared to the other interventions. The strategy can work for other polarizing problems too, based on one experiment in a rural metal smelting town in British Columbia. After convincing several local governments across the West Kootenay region to shift to 100% renewables, volunteers with the nonprofit Neighbors United kept running into difficulties in the town of Trail, where they encountered distrust of environmentalists. They spoke to hundreds of residents, listening to their worries about losing jobs, finding common ground, and telling personal stories about climate change like friends would, instead of debating the facts like antagonists. A stunning 40% of residents shifted their beliefs, and Trail City Council voted in 2022 to shift to 100% renewable energy by 2050. So both facts and stories have a place, Bloomfield said. For conservative audiences, she suggests that climate advocates move away from talking about global systems, and scientists with the IPCC, a nameless, faceless, nebulous group of people, and towards local matters that people actually know. And I wholeheartedly agree. Getting information from friends and other trusted individuals can really help, unless they are up to their ears in QAnon. They're not necessarily authoritative as the IPCC, but it helps you connect with that information, and you can trust that person, so you can trust that they're resharing. Now, I thought that was good. Now, of course, there are those of us who are not exactly thrilled with the IPCC, and we think they're a bit too conservative, and they've become very, they're run by the fossil fuel industry now. But I will say that the smaller countries like Mia Motley's country, the smaller island countries, are there because they need help. If they don't get the help, they will be climate refugees, and they won't have countries because of sea level rise. So this is just, I'm not going to read this one, but it was from 2021, and I actually had this in my notes. It was inoculating yourself against digital, and it's like a psychological vaccine against misinformation. But I'm not going to use this one. It's there. This group is there. All the stuff will be in there. This is these are names in this area. But what I really want to look at is John Compton and Sander van der Linden, their work, because they took models from epidemiology, how they are increasingly used to better understand how misinformation spreads in online networks. And I really, I do like it. I noticed Obsolete said interrupted by ads. I tried to get rid of them, and they're every 30 minutes. I'm sorry, guys. I have to learn. Jake has to teach me how to get rid of them for live streams. I'm sorry. I couldn't figure it out. But anyway, you could still give super chats. I can't even find my my sound effects. They're not working. But anyway, these two, I listened to quite a few of Josh's pieces, and I'm going to just tell you that it is from epidemiology, and they are increasingly used to better understand how misinformation spreads in online networks. If misinformation behaves like a virus, invading a susceptible host and rapidly spreading from one mind to another, then the development of a psychological vaccine seems essential. Now, like I said, how the people that started to go down and talk about Pizzagate and then really went into QAnon, I don't know if they were able to be inoculated, but the development of this is essential. And luckily, there is a science of mental immunity, and there's a lot to like about the analogy at the heart of much mental immunity research, inoculation theory. Inoculation theory's analogic namesake tells us what inoculation theory does and explains a good deal of how it's doing it. And we think it's doing well. The analogy is of value to scholars beginning to work with this theory as a heuristic and as a primer. And it's of value to the most senior inoculation scholars as a springboard for theoretical advancement and innovative applications. As it's of value in these ways for many of the same reasons, it's clear, it's accurate, and it's inspiring. And what I do want to say is that it is not taking and telling people that they have to think some way. It is not. It is giving them support in understanding facts. It's always fact-based. It's not innuendo. It's not just saying, oh, you got to think this way. It's not. It's not like advertising. You'll think of advertising from days gone by and how advertising manipulates you. This is not that. It is how, and it's been around since the early 60s, when social psychologist William McGuire offered it as an explanation for how a belief could be made more resistant to persuasive efforts to change the belief, which he termed a vaccine for brainwash. At the same time, McGuire was concerned about narrative that American soldiers were being brainwashed by enemy troops during the Korean War. He reasoned that the real issue was that soldiers had no mental defenses against the types of ideological attacks they would be facing. So it's like head them off at the pass. Of course, as a concept, it goes back much further, including Aristotle's refutational enthymeme, or the idea that one could preempt an argument by getting ahead of it and making one's case beforehand. But it was McGuire who first leaned so heavily on analogic to explain how and under what conditions a belief could be made more resistant to change. And the vaccine analogy does a nice job explaining it. Just as a body can be made more resistant to viral threats through pre-exposure to weakened forms of the virus, a belief can be made more resistant to persuasive threats through pre-exposure to weakened forms of the persuasion. And like I said, it's not persuading people in a way that's harmful or scary. It is just it's really for the greater good, like not smoking cigarettes or even, let's say, take school kids. Younger children now have social media. And when I first went for my undergrad in psychology, we did not study that. It wasn't a big thing. But you can see that kids need a mental inoculation to keep them from getting the virus of bullshit, or at least give them the tools in how to understand what they are hearing, how to question it, and how to make good decisions with these little inoculations that they might be given. Not brainwash them and not manipulate them and not sell them anything. Give them tools so that when they are out in the big bad world, they can actually stand back and think about these things because they were inoculated by certain things that they heard or that they were told. So one of the remarkable things about psychological inoculation is that its efficacy does not seem limited to specific content included in that message, the specific counter-arguments that are raised and preempted. Just as some vaccines prove effective against multiple strains of the same virus, raising and refuting a handful of potential counter-arguments protects against many counter-arguments. This seems to be especially the case when designing inoculation messages that protect against manipulation strategies used in the spreading of bullshit. Strategies that can be attempted across a large range of issues in a range of contexts. So, and I'm going to go down a little bit. I want to go down. Okay. More recently, inoculation scholars have discovered that the process of cognitive inoculation not only models prophylactic or preemptive medical inoculation, but also seems to mirror recent advantages in therapeutic medical inoculation. So if you can understand where they're going, you can see it's not fearful. They said that the analogy extends farther, that their biological immune system contains so many memory T cells which recognize specific antigens. They can remain in the body long after an infection has passed. So, you're saying, okay, well, what's the infection? The belief in QAnon, or that Donald Trump is God, or that climate change is a bunch of bull, hoax, whatever. So you can take any of these things, any of these social constructs that actually have counter arguments based in fact and science, and work to try to make people cognitively immune. So if people are cognitively immune, we could have a healthier society. And the beauty of herd immunity with this is not that everyone can or needs to be vaccinated. The herd is protecting so long as we reach a sufficient audience. There's still so much to work out about the theory, but here's what we're thinking now. We gain a lot by keeping the analogy of inoculation theory in mind as we work towards building better inoculation messaging, application, and theorizing. And again, it's not nefarious. It is not making you buy things. It is not capitalism. It is for the good of all, really. And we will talk. If there's questions, please, please, please try to put a queue, because I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to see them. So we're going to move over, and I'm going to show you the studies. Psychological inoculation against misinformation, current evidence and future directions. This was from May of 2022, and it's pretty much the same as what I read to you. So why fact-checking and debunking misinformation, it's just not enough. And we see that. We see it's not enough because so many people have fallen for so much garbage. And I'll say it's garbage because I follow Paul Beckwith, I follow Jim Mass, I follow James Hansen, I follow Leon Simmons. I bring on people who have interesting voices based in scientific research. And when somebody says that I am bringing on a fossil fuel shill because I'm bringing a voice on that may have a worldview that came from experiences that are different than ours, it's for learning. It's not for manipulating. It's to give you the absolute chance to have this information and be able to understand and say, hey, and in being inoculated, it's just, it's not, you're not getting a vaccine. I mean, goddamn, So there are, the people, of course, they want to find ways to reduce the spread and influence, from legal and policy intervention to post hoc corrections such as debunking and fact-checking. So there's a lot here. And there was the early work. I mean, I could go on because this is so fascinating to me. Originally developed by McGuire in the 60s, it's rooted in a biological metaphor, which I've said. So we're going to go down, and all of this will be in the show notes, and how you can use it. This is the science, and they did the research. Here's one, for example: an inoculation intervention targeting climate misinformation may refute specific misleading arguments surrounding the well-established scientific consensus on anthropogenic climate change. For refutational, same inoculations, the subsequent attack contains misinformation on the exact topic, such as the previously mentioned, I didn't go into it, Oregon petition. Whereas for refutational different inoculation, the subsequent attack contains different climate-related misinformation, such as how reducing carbon dioxide levels cannot make a difference for climate. So, but earlier, the individuals were exposed to same arguments that were later refuted, and one could argue that individuals should be better equipped to resist persuasion. That's it. It's really persuasion, but it's not persuasion in a nefarious way. I'm telling you right now. It's not manipulating. It's for the good of society. All right, so I'm going to move on from this one because here's another one. This was psychological. This was in Nature Human Behavior, Psychological Inoculation Strategies to Fight Climate Change Disinformation across 12 countries. And this was more research, how they did it and what they did. And one quick thing, people process scientific messages not as a neural information processors, but rather by weighing the message against their prior convictions. So it has a lot to do with your world view. Against desired outcomes, against effective associations, and through the lens of their socio-cultural ideological contexts. When these psychological factors are misaligned with scientific information about climate change, anti-science beliefs fester and they become resistant to correction. And we all know why that is a problem. Obviously, we're headed towards the cliff. I'm not going to say the Seneca cliff. So that's one piece here. There. And this one. Okay. And then I'm going to move on. This is another one, the NIH. And psychological inoculation can reduce susceptibility in large rational agent networks. And this one also, this abstract here in this was unchecked spread. We know what it is already. I read it. Here we use an agent-based model of social network populated with belief updating users. We find that although equally rational agents may be assisted by an inoculation interventions to reject misinformation, which you have to be able to have the tools. Even among such agents, intervention efficacy is temporally sensitive. We find that as beliefs disseminate, users form self-reinforcing echo chambers leading to belief consolidation, irrespective of their veracity. Interrupting this process requires front-loading of inoculation interventions by targeting critical thresholds of network users before consolidation occurs. So they talk about the theory, just like I have, and how to do it and all. So that's another publication there. And this is this is called Inoculation Theory and Misinformation. And believe it or not, those of you may say, oh my God, it's NATO. But they published by NATO Strategic Communications because I suppose even the psychologists that work for NATO in any country understand some of the dangers of misinformation and bullshit. And we've seen it with wars. We've seen it with a lot of wars that we've been through. I've seen it with every single war I've lived through. We all got bamboozled, and we're still getting bamboozled. We're getting bamboozled, and you know where I'm going to say it. We're getting bamboozled because we're looking at a genocide, and people are actually they support Israel's right to defend itself, but the overreaction of killing tens upon tens of thousands of children and people, I think those people could probably use a little inoculation theory. Correcting misinformation and the continued influence effect. So there's a lot of studies in here. I'm not going to read all of it because I'm going to put them in the show notes. And for those of you that are interested in this information, as I am pretty nerdy in this, it's in there. And it talks about shifts towards or away from scientific consensus about climate change. After seeing a consensus message, fake news, both, and a general partial vaccine and specific full vaccine inoculation message. So this was, again, van der Linden. And these were the simple facts. There's the fake news, side by side, partial vaccine, full vaccine, and then there's a control group. And was their perception shifted? So, and then there's technique based, but we're not going to get into that. There's a video I'm going to have in the show notes. It's actually a podcast that is really, really good. And here they were talking about the inoculation games. There was a whole article about the research that they did with a game called Bad News. And it was a choice-based browser game created by Drog and the University of Cambridge, which players take the role of a fake news producer, and over the course of 6 levels, each covering a single misinformation technique, such as trolling, conspiratorial reasoning, or impersonating fake accounts, players grow from an anonymous social media user to a fake news tycoon. At first evaluation of the game's efficacy with over 15,000 responses assessed through a voluntary survey embedded within the game environment showed that bad news players find tweets containing a misinformation techniques significantly less reliable after playing compared to before. So that's really interesting stuff. But again, in the interest of time, I have been 51 minutes. I really don't want to do too much on this. You'll learn it. You go see it. So what is the Mental Immunity Project? Want to learn to think better, want to protect yourself from and others from manipulative information? You've come to the right place. What is the Mental Immunity Project? The Mental Immunity Project is a partnership between the Cognitive Immunology Research Collaborative and Thinking is Power, a robust base of research, and a rich experience in teaching critical thinking skills. After all of this is predicated on critical thinking skills, which are, at least in the United States, because that's all I can talk about, are sorely lacking. And that's why I say maybe looking at this type of thing is something that you possibly can use in schools. And I see that Rollins Switch, I saw you had a comment about who can you trust. What you trust are facts and scientific data, and things that are proven, things that have happened, the outcomes. It's not just telling somebody that you have to think this or believe it. See, that's the thing. Their goal is to equip everyone with skills they need to spot and shed the worst kind of ideas: extremism, hate, pseudoscience, conspiracy theories, propaganda, etc. I don't know what they mean about conspiracy theories, but, I didn't go that far. So that's a project working on trying to make the world a better place. And if you want to be skeptical about it, go ahead, but all the stuff will be in there. And I abhor you, really. Now, if you saw the beginning video, I played, it had a clip on YouTube. And we're going to segue a little bit, and I see you're all there. We're going to just segue over to the disinformation on YouTube, because I am a YouTube commentator, and I am a person that likes to bring education, and I really don't want to tell people how to think. And I'm not going to say because you believe in something or you think something is right that I'm not, who am I to tell you you're wrong? But I may be able to give you tools to understand why you can question yourself. I question myself all the time. And this article was, I wanted to find something in it. All right, so this new denial made up 70% of climate denying content on YouTube in 2023, compared to 35% in 18. It largely centers around deceptive messages that climate solutions won't work, and that the science backing these solutions is unreliable, or that global warming isn't harmful. Now, one caveat for this. When you are a channel like ours, and you do bring on all kinds of voices, and some may say, well, I'm going to question this because it may not work. And they have scientific information, studies, experience in a field that could say, hey, this is not the way. But, you take this for what it is. And I'm hoping that you have the tools to decipher for yourself what is what is based in facts, reality, not alternative facts. So this was interesting, and they didn't come up with the doomer thing in this one. Where we've when people that call us doomers, because we have a wider worldview of the science, and it doesn't point in a very pretty direction. But I don't think that is a case of needing inoculation against something, because we are those people that find the science, that already know and understand that. So, but it's a pretty interesting article right there. And then I wanted to go and show you this guy, Alex Epstein, biggest bullshit artist guy. This is somebody who's funded by the fossil fuel industry, and he says it. And he talks about it, but, he wants to make you feel like, okay, it won't work. And a lot of us feel like they are apocalyptically destructive. We understand that there are some things about so-called green energy, humongous solar farms that are taking up the desert, that, it is not the way I think to go. That why aren't we looking at outfitting people? Why aren't we looking at nationalizing energy and changing homes, buildings, not the grid, not business as usual, not that. But this guy is talking about what are energy freedom policies, government actions to protect the ability of producers to produce all forms of energy and consumers to use them all, which includes drilling, fracking, and all of the really bad things we know, even mining, which we know is problematic. And Simon has more information on that, and he's been called a shill. But he's been in the mining industry. How do you call someone a shill who has experience in the mining industry and brings his experience to tell us a worldview that we could take or leave, but still tells us? He's not trying to make you believe in a way to be. He's giving you information based on his experience, and he's constantly learning. So, cost-effective energy is essential to an abundant and safe world. Cost-effective energy is desperately needed by billions of people. Fossil fuels are uniquely able to provide cost-effective energy. So, of course, he's into gross domestic product growth, unlimited growth. All right? Unlimited growth. Alex Epstein, I don't like him. I think he sucks. Other people might think he's just wonderful. And then I'm going to move on. Let's see, we are 58 minutes. This was another article. What is so-called new denialism all about? And I want to go down to find, there was something I wanted to find in this one. It was still, again, about social media, but they didn't, it wasn't the bullshit doomer argument where doomers are saying, don't do anything. Because I don't know, is there anyone on this chat that says we don't want to do anything to make any changes? No. Okay? No. And even if it's a homestead or growing your own food or local elections, getting involved, even if it's writing to the Federal Register on programs like your town wants to drill new fracking wells and it's not banned, and the Federal Register has a question up that asks you, responding to the Federal Register, there's a lot of things you can do. And Jake, his channel is what you can do. And I think we're going to collaborate on a Federal Register show and show you how to do it. It helps. They read it. And a lot of decisions are made by what American citizens write to the Federal Register. So scientists who study Earth systems have agreed for decades that the burning of fossil fuels creates an imbalance, the Earth energy imbalance, of heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere that are continually warming this world. Elliot shows us this. Jim shows us this. Paul shows us this all the time, our favorites. New denialism has only started to become prominent because of the overwhelming evidence of climate change. So they say it turns to discredit lesser-known solutions, but picking at clean energy solutions that are less well-established. See, I don't feel that way. I say question authority. Always ask questions to understand the bigger picture. And that's why I find it offensive when Doomer is lobbied about as something that is so horrible, because really it sounds bad, but it's only people that are questioning authority, questioning. We can question the science. It doesn't mean that if we find that the science is valid, reliable, and many peer-reviewed pieces, that maybe it could work. Something could work. Now, I don't think we have time for me to go into this article, but it was really good. And her name is Nanny Hurley, and she published this in the Taoist Online. Is 6 mass extinctions on the cards, and humans might not be able to survive it. Okay, that's controversial right there. But she talks about the climate deniers. She says most people aren't climate deniers any longer, although it's not in its original form. And she also talks about the temperature, and she also talks about, what is absolutely happening. The case for natural theory, when someone claims that climate change is nothing new and the earth is heated up, they're right? But scientists know, and they have the answer. So, anyway, I didn't turn on Medium on this. I have it, but I didn't turn it on in this browser. So that was the last one, and I just wanted to show you on Twitter. And I wanted to show you Lyle Lewis. And the Bureau of Land Management, USFS, USFWS, for 30 years, he analyzes humanity through the lens of an endangered species biologist, okay? And he just wrote a new book, Racing to Extinction. And why I highlighted him was because there are those bots that follow him. And he says, the people I know who are routinely categorized as doomers do more for the environment and are more aware of ecosystem nuances than any single group. I've yet to meet the mythical doomer who has given up or doesn't do anything. And he's on there all of the time. So he says he's a proud former Forest Service biology who represents perfectly the typical sycophant bureaucrat described in Racing to Extinction. He was a good team player, but here's one. Roger, here's a denier, you'd say. Just an ecologist who's had it wrong for 55 years, trying to facilitate government control by the enlightened, oh so superior cult science practitioners. So you see, it's all over, especially X, okay? He says doomers are those that can project out the consequences of humanity's actions very pragmatically, which I wholeheartedly agree with. All right. So if you get a chance, check out his X. But you'll see there's a lot of horrible, ugly people that will follow and will make awful, awful comments. And now it is time for us to see you and your comments. And let's see. I hope that a lot of you have stuck with me. I think you have. And I'll start with the super chat so I can say thank you. Thank you for the super. Oh, astrologer climate witness. Thank you, Wanda. Thank you. That was very lovely of you. And then Obsolete Optics comes back, Brett, saying thank you to her. So thank you to both of you. Thank you to both of you. All right, now let's go down some of your stuff. Jake, I thought Jake had a good something. Yeah, well, we feel it is. That's the bigger picture. But that doesn't mean we sit back and do absolutely nothing. I don't think there's any of us that do that. I really don't. Hi, BB. All right, let me go all the way down and see anything you've got. Okay. Well, you could be right. I see a lot of self-satisfied, self-made experts who have decided everyone else just can't comprehend the truth. Well, that's a tough one. That is. It's a tough one. Anyone read H. Kunstler's Handmade Take? Remember the junkyard and the motorcycle gang? I can see this as being a thing. All right, let's see. Yes, Paul Beckwith, we love. Hi. Okay, hi. The more who buy into the truth of global warming, the more we can do to mitigate the worst of it. The more who deny, the more resistance there will be. And these are just tools I've given you that we can use in the future, and we can learn how to use to help people along, to understand what's happening, you know? Oh, you have not. You're helping me. He says he's the mythical doomer who's given up and doesn't do anything. But that's bullshit, because you're here and you help me. So obviously that's doing something, right? All right, let me see. I'm looking for Hi Singing Way, Poppy, Melanie. We are going to need multiple forms of alternative, environmentally friendly energy. You can't depend on just one source. We also need brand new infrastructure to handle human-induced climate change. But, right, we don't need business as usual. You know, we don't need the, oh yeah, it's getting warmer, but it's confused by variation. Well, it's a confluence of different things. I mean, it's not just CO2 either. It's methane, there's water vapor. I mean, there's a lot of different things that contribute to why we're seeing the warming. High atmospheric CO2 levels have been implicated in past mass extinctions. Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff. It doesn't matter anymore if people believe in climate change or not. It won't change the outcome of overshoot. Well, maybe overshoot is something that needs to be understood quite more. And Colinello, he says he questions the science. They're usually too conservative in their prognostications. Okay. And Karen, you just had something and I lost it. Oh, shoot. Forgive me, it takes me a minute. They want to put the burden on individual citizens instead of corporations and businesses. No, I don't know. That's just a part of the puzzle, a piece of the puzzle. We know it's systematic change. Now, one could say, hey, you're talking radical stuff. Business as usual is But we know how we feel. Gross domestic product is destroying the planet, right? Early love. We want those Jewish space lasers. You guys are very funny. I'm an overshoot denialist. No, sweetheart. I am probably not an overshoot denialist. Oh, boy. Overshit. Yes. Let's see. Dmitry Orlov used to write good stuff about overshoot. He makes you pay to read his stuff now. Yeah, well, that's because we're, like I've said before, we're in a gig economy. And it's subscriptions, and it is what we are doing is because there's not enough jobs, and we are helping each other. We're supporting each other. You know, the people that believe climate change isn't a thing are the same people that will ask for collective help. They will get it. Probably won't change their mind on communism, right? Because we are libtard commies. Oh, you guys are the change I want to see. Well, we are. We are. And I really hope that this was helpful to give you these things that are happening out there in the psychology world. A lot, that might make the human condition just a little bit better. And maybe by making the human condition a little bit better, it will make all species condition a little bit better. There's those hunters that go and do the big game, like Wayne LaPierre's wife who kills elephants, who's so indoctrinated. Who knows? Somebody like that. Are they inoculation material? Sandy, what do you think will happen to the human species? What is my best guess, which I hate to do, in the big picture, in the big, big analysis? I think there'll be pockets of humans, but I do think that, like Simon said, he used a lot of people will Darwinize themselves out. And he says people are being replaced. Well, yeah. Like I've said, police dogs are now in different big cities. They're robots, right? Yeah. Okay. And the atmospheric river. Yes. Inbound West Coast. Oh, by the way, that reminds me, before we go, I want to look at my calendar because Tuesday night I have Justin Liso with me. And then on Friday night, I've got Kelly Lincoln from Humboldt County Public Radio and Nicholas Humphrey together to talk about what's happening in California. Definitely. That's going to be a good show. And we're going to be able to talk about what Nicholas is studying in disaster management, which we call it. And hopefully he'll be done soon. And thank you. Thank you. I don't know what work I do. It's a hobby. I hate the word work because, yeah, it's happening in food prices. Over already. Well, honey, I've been, an hour and 13 minutes? I'm not going to do a marathon. It's kind of hard for me to sit, but yeah, so look forward. And I also hope that you like Justin because I have a plan, and that is to do a show with Brett, Obsolete Optics, and Justin Liso. And Justin has made his own small, tiny little YouTube channel where he looks at the Arctic and the Arctic ice. So I think that we can bring him over, help him out on his channel also. Help them to grow and learn and all those wonderful things. And thank you, Kristen, sweetheart. And thank you, everybody. Where's Singing Way's comment? She always has great comments, but I love you guys. So, and thank you for the super chats. You can join and be a member. The Buy Me a Coffee is okay. I mean, I like this membership right on YouTube. It's one-stop shopping. And okay, Nadia. Thank you. Let me bring that up. She says, summer-like SSTs are threatening a blue ocean event. when it happens, when it's going to start, we'll cover it. You know Jennifer's not going to be able to stay away for long. And she was sick. So, of course, my Jennifer will be back. All right, guys. So I really, really do appreciate you all coming. I appreciate the super chats. I want you to join, and I'm going to make, videos and have, I think, members only stuff. It'll be fun. Then you'll feel like you're part of a club. It just won't be QAnon or Pizzagate. All right, guys? Hey, you know how much I love y'all. I'm just feeling pretty darn good after this show. Thank you. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Don't forget the letter hack. After this, if you want to hear some wonderful, calm reading, don't forget letter hack. My buddy Matt